Okay, so, like everyone on the internet, I am obsessed with cat videos. But today, we're going beyond the memes to tackle a question that's got people debating all over. Are our feline friends secretly, well, mini agents of chaos, wreaking havoc on wildlife?
Yeah, it's a question a lot of people are asking, and we're going to dig into it today. We're doing a deep dive into an article by Emiliano Gerina. It's called The Cat, Kitty-Thanos or Harmless Pet.
Okay, I like it. Kitty-Thanos, that's great.
Right, so this article, it really digs into the science behind this whole debate, looking at whether the narrative that cats are, bad for wildlife is actually based on solid evidence, or is it more hype than anything else?
Which is a hard question because we love our cats,
Yeah.
but we also care about the environment. So where do we even begin to unpack this?
Well, the article starts by looking at two big studies on cat predation. One was published in Nature Communications, and the other in Frontiers in Ecology and Evolution. And one of the things it points out is that one of these studies relied heavily on something called citizen science.
Citizen science.
Yeah.
Okay, for those of us who haven't been to science school, break that down for us. What is that exactly?
Basically, it's when everyday people, not just scientists, contribute to research. So, in theory, it's really cool, right? Because you can get way more data than you could with a traditional study.
Makes sense. More data points, bigger impact, right?
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, citizen science, it totally depends on the methods they use. Like, how good is their methodology? And the article points out some potential flaws in the way this particular study used citizen science.
Uh-oh. Okay, so what kind of red flags are we talking about here? What are the issues?
Well, one of the biggest ones is the sample size.
Okay.
They drew conclusions about millions of cats, but based their data on only 145.
Ooh, that's rough. That seems tiny. Like, if you're trying to figure out what America wants to eat for dinner and you only ask 100 people?
Exactly. You're not going to get an accurate picture. And in this case, the tiny sample size combined with, I think, some other potential biases in how they collected data. Well, it makes it really hard to be confident about any big conclusions they're drawing about how cats, all cats, impact wildlife.
Yeah, it's not just how many cats, but also how you're figuring out what they're doing when they're out there, right? Like, how do you even study that?
Right. And this study, they relied a lot on what cat owners said their cat brought home. But not every cat drags every little thing they catch back to their owner, right? Plus, can people always tell what their cat even ate, from a pile of feathers or something?
So that could really mess up the results if the information isn't that good in the first place.
Exactly.
So we're already seeing how the science can get a little murky.
Mm-hmm.
But the article goes even further, right?
Oh, yeah. There's more. So this study, they also used photos to try to verify what kind of prey the cats had caught.
Okay, that seems smart. Like, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Especially if you're trying to figure out if Fluffy brought home a robin or, like, a rare bird. What's wrong with that?
So here's the thing. The article mentions that the researchers, they didn't actually share these photos publicly.
They didn't. Why not?
They said it was because of privacy concerns.
Privacy. For the cats.
I know, right? But think about it. It makes it almost impossible for anyone else to double-check their work.
So, like, we just have to trust them that they got the bird IDs right.
Basically. And it gets weirder. Because they identified some of the prey as specific types of lizards, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these lizards, they're only found on certain islands.
Okay.
And guess what? None of the cats in this whole study lived anywhere near those islands.
Wait, hold on. So either we've got cats on tiny vacations we don't know about, or
something's off.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty big detail to miss. It really makes you wonder about the rest of their findings.
Exactly. And it shows just how important it is to be able to back up these claims with solid data.
Right, because if you can't even get the location of the lizard right,
Exactly.
then what else are you getting wrong? Okay, so we've established cats eat things. No surprise there. But this article isn't just about whether cats eat birds or lizards. It also looks at whether they're, like, genuinely a threat to all wildlife. Everywhere. Which seems like a big jump, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's an important difference. The article really emphasizes that something can be, potentially dangerous without actually being a risk in a particular situation.
Okay, so what does that mean in, cat terms?
Think of it this way. You know a lion is dangerous, right? But it's not actually a risk to you unless you are, hanging out on the savannah.
Okay, so it's all about context.
Exactly. We need to be looking at the impact of cats locally. So are there already wild cats in the ecosystem? Have domestic cats been there a long time? Or are they new to the area? Things like that.
See, this is why I love this show. I'm learning so much. For instance, I had no idea how long cats have been like part of human civilization. The article, it mentions them being worshipped in ancient Egypt, which I knew about, but then it goes on and it's like, nope, even further back.
Yeah, the article talks about archaeological evidence that shows cats and humans have been hanging out for like 10,000 years.
10,000 years, that's like as long as we've been farming. 10,000 years. It really makes you think about, like, at what point does a species stop being considered, introduced, especially when they've been intertwined with us for so long?
Right. It's a fascinating question. And it kind of makes you rethink those simple categories we put things in.
Yeah, it's not always so black and white.
Definitely not. But speaking of unintended consequences, there was another point in the article that I found really interesting, something I hadn't thought about before.
Okay, hit me with it.
Domestic cats, they can actually be a pretty big threat to wild cats.
Wait, really? That seems counterintuitive. How does that work?
So domestic cats, they can interbreed with wildcat populations.
Okay.
And when that happens, it can dilute the wildcat's genetics,
Yeah.
and that makes it harder for them to survive as a distinct species.
Yeah, the article actually mentions the Scottish wildcat as an example.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They're extinct in the wild now, and it's partly because of this whole hybridization issue. It's kind of a sobering thought, Like even something as, I don't know, seemingly harmless as owning a cat can have these ripple effects that we don't always see.
It really shows how, even with the best intentions, sometimes our actions can have these unintended consequences.
For sure. So this deep dive has been really eye-opening, to say the least. But before we send everyone into a panic about their furry little overlords, let's talk takeaways. If someone's listening to this right now, looking at Mittens curled up on the sofa, maybe feeling a little conflicted, what's the message we want them to walk away with?
I think the biggest takeaway here is not to demonize cats. It's more about understanding the nuances of this issue and being responsible pet owners.
Yeah, the article really emphasizes that it's not as simple as just saying cats are bad and calling it a day. We need more research, but it has to be good research, right?
Exactly. We need studies that are well-designed, transparent, studies that look at specific ecosystems, the history of cats in those environments, all of that.
And in the meantime, while we're waiting for all this new research, what does responsible cat ownership look like, practically speaking?
Well, spaying and neutering is huge. That's
Yeah.
a big one to help control the population.
Makes sense.
And keeping cats indoors if you can, that obviously minimizes any risk to wildlife.
Yeah. What about people who can't keep their cats inside all the time, though?
Yeah.
Are there things they can do to make their outdoor adventures a little less impactful on their wild neighbors?
There are. Some people use bell collars to give birds and other animals a fighting chance. Those aren't perfect, but they can help. And there's some really interesting research happening with cat fencing and even GPS tracking to keep better track of where they're going and what they're up to.
Okay, that's good to know. So it sounds like there's a lot we still don't know. But just being aware of these issues, asking those critical questions about the research we're seeing, that's a good first step, right?
Absolutely. It's about moving beyond these black and white statements we see online all the time and really appreciating how complex this issue is.
Because, as we've seen today, even the fluffiest, most adorable creatures can have a surprisingly big impact on the world around them. It's
Yeah.
like we've been saying this whole time, right? Things are never as simple as they seem.
Totally. And this article really drives that home. It's tempting to just grab onto a simple story, like cats are evil or cats are innocent. But the truth is way more complicated.
It's not black and white. We can't ignore the impact they might be having, especially in certain places, certain ecosystems. But we also have to make sure our understanding is based on, good science and not just making huge generalizations.
Exactly. And I think that's really where this deep dive takes us, beyond just the whole cat thing, It reminds us that we got to think critically about everything we read, especially about stuff that we have feelings about, like our pets.
Oh, for sure. It's easy to get sucked into those headlines that are like, cats are evil. But as we've seen with those studies, sometimes you really got to look closer at the details.
Totally. Always got to ask, how did they do this study? Who paid for it? What else is going on here? All of that.
Because, and let's be real, if we're only focusing on cats as the bad guys in this whole biodiversity crisis, we're missing some way bigger problems.
100%. Like the article said, habitat loss, climate change, pollution. Those are enormous problems. Those are the real threats to wildlife, much more so than even the most, ambitious house cat.
It's like blaming the triangle player for a bad concert when the conductor's the one who's lost the plot.
No, that's
Yeah.
a great way to put it. If we're serious about saving wildlife, we've got to address the root causes, not just these, like, surface-level symptoms.
So this deep dive hasn't just been about cats. It's been a deep dive into, like, thinking itself.
Yeah.
We've learned about good science, bad science, jumping to conclusions, and the importance of looking at the whole picture.
And hopefully it's made people curious to learn even more on their own.
For sure. So next time you see a cat stalking a laser pointer, just remember, it's not just about that adorable little fur ball. It's about this whole web of life that we're all part of and how we can all, try to do better. And those are conversations worth having.